Welcome back. In his State of the Nation address this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that Cabinet accepted responsibility for the unrest that rocked Gauteng and Kwazulu Natal last July. And what more needs to be done after a presidential panel found that ultimately it is ministers, members of that Cabinet, who must be held accountable for the looting and violence that took place. The panel report was released earlier this week. It was scathing of the internal contradictions within the ANC and government. Remember, at the time, some said it was an insurrection or coup, meaning it was orchestrated violence. Others believed it was spontaneous criminal looting. The panel said that the violence should be understood within the context of South African society, including the inequality and poverty that South Africa has seen, and added that political sympathy towards former President Jacob Zuma should be part of that understanding. It did say the events were partly organised and partly opportunistic looting. Well, he's written about this. We are now joined by Professor in the Department of Political Studies at UNISA, Professor De Kotze. Professor Kotze, thank you for being with us. Firstly, on Thursday, the President said, we accept accountability. If you were watching that, at the same time, there was some chants from the MPs to resign. Was it enough, firstly, for him to say we accept accountability in the SONA, in the State of the Nation address?
Well, that was the recommendation by the panel report. They also said at the same time that they must develop a plan in order to not merely take responsibility and be accountable for what has happened, but they must develop a plan how to prevent this from happening again and to improve on the deficiencies and the shortcomings that they've identified in the report. And there's quite a lot of it, especially in the criminal justice system and especially in intelligence and to some extent also the police. So there is a lot in terms of institutional reform that is required and recommended within the state institutions, but also then in terms of the political leadership, the political accountability, the role of ministers. And I think what we've seen in this report is that they clearly indicate that there was a gap between the operational part of, for example, the police or intelligence and the political leadership of the members of the cabinet. And that, in their mind, was very much contributed to the lack of a response in July last year.
And with all of that, then you would expect much more than just an acknowledgement of accountability. So we are waiting for more.
Yes, but in terms of accountability, I think it's a very important step. That it's the first time that I'm aware of that such a report comes to the conclusion that it is not individuals, and especially not individual officials or senior officials like, let's say, the National Commissioner of Police or the DG of Intelligence, but that the onus on this is placed squarely on the cabinet, and not individual ministers even, but the cabinet as a whole. So I think this is a step in a different direction than what we've seen in the past when it came to these type of panels or commissions of inquiry, which means that ultimately they say, yes, there were all these structural problems in terms of socioeconomic problems, in terms of the way in which these government institutions or state institutions are organized, like intelligence. But ultimately, that was not the core issue. The core issue was that we must say it's a political problem. It's the way in which the political leadership played their role, or lack of leadership that existed at that point.
In terms of it taking action, though, would it not have been maybe easier for the president if names had been mentioned, if blame had been put on individuals? The report insists on a national response plan which should demonstrate the willingness of ministers to be held accountable. What does that mean?
Yeah, that is for me also not clear. I think they kept it very general, very undefined. We know that two of the three ministers in the key portfolios, and that's the Minister of Defense and Military and Veterans, she has been removed to become the Speaker. And the Minister of State Security at that stage, Ayanda Dlotlu, she has become the Minister of Public Administration. So two of the three, Minister Beckett Kelly is obviously the one that's still in the position where he was then as Minister of Police. have moved or have been removed from their positions. But still, it's not. I don't think that is what I meant by accountability. It's not simply taking people, persons, leaders, ministers away from their portfolios of them, but there's structural changes that must be made on the one hand, and then also acceptance that to say, but it's us who made the mistake. And these are the things that we are going to do in response to that in order to change. For example, if it comes to intelligence, President Ramaphosa had received 3 years ago already the Sydney Mufamadi high-level review panel report, which gave him quite a very specified recommendations of how to change and improve and modernize the intelligence services. We don't have something really similar for the police, except the report on the Marikana massacre. And many of those recommendations haven't been implemented since those days. So in a sense, there's a vacuum that has to be filled, and President Ramaphosa is clearly now under pressure, given this report and the lot of prominence that it receives, to do something, because many people are saying they feel unsafe for the fact that also what we've seen with Parliament, with other types of fires that happened at Waterkloof, although they said it might not be part of it, Kumani and other areas, and the public starts to feel unsafe about their situation, that they are not protected by the protection and security services. So President Ramaphosa will have to do something. He can't simply go through this and say, well, we are going systematically to work on it.
Well, what should he do? Shouldn't he be holding somebody accountable for the fact that there's been no implementation of those recommendations around Marikana? And then again, we saw police inaction or inability to act well in a scary situation in July. So who is that? The Commissioner, the Minister of Police? Why has nobody enforced that? Like you said, there was some moving of the deck chairs, some ministers were moved, some arguably would say that going to Parliament is actually a promotion. The Minister of the Defence didn't suffer at all. Should the President be firing someone, and who should it be?
Well, he said there will be changes in leadership. That is said in the SONA speech, again, without being specific. But I think those who are in the firing line at the moment is, first of all, the National Commissioner of Police. Then, secondly, Minister Bekele. He definitely will have to account for what his role was. He has his own version of it, but still, I think the public opinion is that they don't have any more faith in him. He is not a credible person in terms of this. And then when it comes to the intelligence service, at the moment there's lots of vacancies for the DGs, for the deputy DGs. And if they can be filled by persons who take a new direction in terms of intelligence, the fact that the intelligence service itself has been, or the management of it, the political management of it, has been moved to the office of the President, away from an individual minister, is already some move that has taken place. When it comes to the military, I think the military is very much taking the backseat at this stage, but the Defence Force also needs some attention. We know that there's lots of deficiencies. They claim it's mainly because of a budget shortages. But the fact is that the Defence Force also will have to receive more attention in order to make them more ready for different types of roles that they can play, whether it is peacekeeping or combat, like what they are doing now in the northern part of Mozambique, or humanitarian services, or other aspects also. So I think that the criminal justice system, when it comes to for example, the NPA and others that have received already quite some attention. But now the security component of that needs even more attention, because it's clearly one of the weak points of the state. And as I said, when you go back to what is the reason for the existence of the state in terms of political theory and otherwise, it's first of all to provide security. And that's what the state at the moment cannot prove, that they are really doing very well.
Yeah, that is a good point to end on. Thank you very much, Professor Dirk Kotze from Political Studies at UNISA. Let's take a look at your weather and we'll be back with more.